Hello, welcome to my channel, Fire Knight's music and video vlogs. Today I am going to be reading Wings of Fire, Escaping Peril by T. Sutherland. This is book 8 in the Wings of Fire series. And today we'll be reading chapter 1. Protologue. 7 years ago. No dragon was safe in the Sky Palace, but the ones with the most dangerous, by far, was the daughter of Queen Scarlet. Or was it now daughter, singular? Ruby hadn't seen her sister, Tourmaline, in 3 days, not since the night they'd been flying together, and high in the starlit sky, glowing in the light of 2 of the moons. Tourmaline had whispered that she was almost ready. "Don't be an idiot. You're almost 10. Furthermore, you'll never be ready," Ruby had whispered back. "She killed her mother plus all of her sisters and 11 of ours. There's no way to defeat her." "She can't be queen forever," Tourmaline said. "She has been queen forever," Ruby argued. 24 years is a long time, but not that long," said Tourmaline. "Queen Oasis was queen longer than that, and look what happened to her." "Are you planning to throw a scavenger at Mother?" Ruby asked. "Because I'm sure she'd appreciate a snack before she kills you." "It's always going to be like this," Tourmaline hissed. She flicked clouds away with her dark orange wings. Until one of us challenges her and wins. You and I are the ones left. The only hope the Skywings have of a decent queen, Ruby. If I defeat her and become queen, we can get out of this war." Ruby wasn't so sure about that. She'd met Byrne, and she'd suspected the Sandwing wouldn't let her alliance go that easily. But it didn't matter. There was no way Tourmaline could win a battle with their mother. "The prophecies will take care of the war," she argued. "The brightest night is in 4 days. "Right," Tourmaline rolled her eyes. "I'm just waiting for a bunch of eggs that haven't even hatched yet to save us. Ruby, I don't want to wait for things to happen. I want to make them happen." "I don't want to watch you die," Ruby growled. Her sister in front of her hovered in front of her for a moment. Stars glittered in her eyes, searching Ruby's. "She's wondering if I want the throne for myself," Ruby thought. "She thinks I'm trying to talk her out of it because I'm planning something. Like I'm that stupid." "Well, don't worry. I won't do it yet," Tourmaline promised. "Another few months of training, maybe. I feel really strong now. I beat Vermilion in a fight the other day. Do you want to hear about it?" Ruby listened to the entire long play-by-play of each move Tourmaline had made. They spent an hour soaring across the peaks in the moonlight. And not only had Tourmaline said anything about leaving the palace. Not even once. But then she was gone, and the most unsettling thing was no one had ever mentioned her absence. Her squadron was still there, training and hunting as though nothing odd had happened. There was no patrols out looking for her, no search parties scrounging the woods, no missive flying out to other queens to ask if they'd seen or abducted the older Skywing princess. Just a quiet vanishing into thin air. Ruby stood in the room she shared with her sister, studying the pile of blankets, the scrolls carelessly tossed aside, and the golden tasseled yellow curtains flapping in the window. There were no splashes of blood, no sign of struggle, no note to say, "Oh, I'm popping off to one of the outposts for a few days. If you see you soon." Did Tourmaline change her mind and run away? Could she have gone to find the talents of peace? But Ruby knew that wasn't what had happened. Her big sister wasn't the kind to ever run away. More significantly, Scarlet had never let the peace moment get in their claws on their daughter. She'd find them and destroy them all at first. Heavy claws were slowly squeezing Ruby's insides, digging their claws harder every minute that Tourmaline was gone. If she found out that Tourmaline was planning to challenge her, what did Mother do? Queen Ruby! Princess Ruby, I mean. She jumped and whirled around. The guard in the doorway cleared his throat. "The Queen has requested your presence in the throne room," he said. "Immediately." "Requested?" Ruby echoed. The expression on his face said clearly that he didn't approve of the question. "Never let them see that you're terrified." That's what Tourmaline said. "Act like a queen so that one day they'll be cheering you for you to slit mother's throat." But now, Tourmaline was gone. And perhaps acting like a queen was exactly what had gotten her killed. "Thank you," Ruby said, inclining her head at the guard as she went past him. Her heartbeat drummed through her shoulders and out to her wingtips. The tunnel felt too small, as though she were the size of 1,000-year-old dragon instead of just 5-year-old dragonette. "Whatever happened to Tourmaline? Am I next?" The dragons huddled by the throne room entrance, whispering. They all straightened their heads and wings as she approached. Curiosity gleamed in their eyes. They must have known Tourmaline was missing, even if no one would talk about it. They must have been wondering, like Ruby was, whether Queen Scarlet had decided to dispose of all her potential threatening heirs. "But I'm not threatening. I'm not." Ruby ducked her long neck as she entered the room, blinking at the blaze of sunlight that reflected off all the golden inlays in the wall. It felt like walking into a funeral pyre. Oppressive heat and smell of dragon fire radiating from the crowd of the courtier closing around her scales. Queen Scarlet wouldn't kill her daughter in front of these dragons, or would she? "Ah, Ruby!" The Queen's voice lilted over all the others, and the room fell silent. "At last! Court! Many of you don't know my daughter, Ruby, 'cause she's been away in training, and even when she is here, she mostly sits in her cave like a sleepy bat. If you ever have seen her, she's probably had her nose in a scroll. But despite the fact that she's nothing like me, she's still somehow my daughter." There was a dutiful smatter of claps. Now, everyone's here. Everyone important, I mean. I have such a thrilling announcement. Ruby, don't lurk by the wall like a jittery centipede. Come stand by your brothers. I want you especially to see this. The crowd parted to let Ruby through. Their evade orange and amber eyes peeled off her scales as she slid by. There was just enough space for it to fit between Vermilon and Hawk, both of them towering over her. Her other two brothers went on Hawk's other side. All of Scarlet's children were there except Tourmaline. Vermilon snorted and edged a step away from her, but Hawk gave her a friendliest nudge of acknowledgement. Ruby always got a feeling that Hawk was cheerfully being nice to her because he knew she would be dead soon. He'd seen the rest of his sisters die under Scarlet's claws. Ruby suspected his good humor came from the security of knowing that he would never have the throne, so he wasn't worth killing. His mother glowed like a poisonous orange from the top of her throne, peering down at the dragons that packed the room. Sharp sparkles of diamonds above her head and along her wings seized the light. Ruby's breath caught in her throat at the sight of the hulking dragon at the queen's side. Burn, their sandwing ally, her face twisted in disgust and boredom. Everyone had been instructed to call her Queen Burn to her face, but Ruby found it hard to think of her that way. For one thing, she hadn't won the war yet. For another, there was only one queen in Ruby's world, and closing her talons around everything in it. On the other side of Queen Scarlet was a tall, odd pile arrangement of black rocks that seemed to be smoking. Finally, Scarlet said, rolling her eyes, as though including the rest of the court in her impatience with Ruby. A chuckle embedded through the crown. "Get on with it!" Burn snapped. Queen Scarlet flicked her tail and stretched her wings with deliberate languor. Ruby had time to wonder if the thrilling announcement had anything to do with Tourmaline. "I have thrillingly murdered one daughter. Why stop there? Who needs daughters anyway? You may all have heard of a certain prophecy," the queen had said. Instead, mumblings about special dragons who would hatch on the brightest night and stop the war. You may have all noticed that the brightest night is tonight. Isn't that terribly exciting? Tiny little heroes crawling out of their eggs any minute now. That is, unless something simply dreadful happens, of course. She cast a sidelong glance at Burn and smiled maliciously. "Then, what you don't know is that someone tried to steal a Skywing egg last night." A gasp ran through the room. "I know," said Queen Scarlet. "A nasty Icewing thief got all the way in here and actually escaped with an egg, the largest one in the hatchery." As it happens, the air crackled as if it might burst into flames at the moment. Ruby might try to imagine life as a Skywing raised outside the Skywing Kingdom. The thief couldn't have planned to take it to the Icewing Kingdom. A Skywing would never survive there. So he was one of the Talons of Peace? Why were they assembling the Dragonettes of prophecy? Was the Dragonette in the stolen egg going to save them? "Oh, don't worry," her mother said. "Queen Burn chased him down, killed him, and destroyed the egg. We don't particularly like little heroes, after all. Especially ones that might try to tell us what to do." So, she clapped her front talons together suddenly, snapping the tension in the room like a bowstring. "Just to be perfectly safe, Queen Burn and I have a marvelous idea. We're going to make sure there are no Skywings hatchlings in the brightest night. Not even one. Not even close. Bring them all in," he called. Ruby watched in confusion as 7 guards filed in, each of them carrying an egg. Red and orange shapes moved under the thin surface of the eggshell. She could see cracks already spreading through the 3 of them. Queen Scarlet narrowed her eyes. "There should be 8, she hissed. "We'll find it, your majesty," said the tallest of the guards. "I promise she didn't get far. It was the runty one, anyway." A skittering sound came from the pile of rocks beside the queen. One of the stones trembled for a moment, and then came tumbling down and bounced across the floor, rolling to a stop at Ruby's feet. Ruby's talons. "Fine," said Queen Scarlet, putting her annoying "but it's a celebration, so I'll just kill someone later" face. "I have someone just wonderful I want to introduce to you all. It seems like a perfect way to do it." "Ooh, the suspense." A puff of impatient smoke snorted out of Burn's nose. "Always a spectacle," she muttered. "Can't just kill something effectively and be done with it." Queen Scarlet ignored her. She was busy removing the rocks from the top of the pile, slowly taking off the roof of the makeshift structure. Another scrambling sound came from inside the rocks. "There's something alive in there," Ruby thought, and then suddenly a little head popped out over the edge of the rocks, only a heartbeat from the queen's talons. Scarlet jerked back, and Ruby was shocked to see something that looked like a flash of fear in her eyes. She craned her neck to see better. What could possibly scare Mother? She's not afraid of anything. Looks like an ordinary dragonette, about 3 years, maybe a year and a half. About a year, maybe a year and a half, with the usual coppery orange scales. But when the dragonette swiveled her head, her eyes met Ruby. Her eyes, they were blue. The weirdest, creepiest blues Ruby had ever seen. Far beyond the color of the sky, like someone had bundled up the sky and immersed it in fire until it burned from inside. That's it, Ruby thought. The dragonette looks like she was burning from the inside. Smoke was even rising from her scales. Over Ruby's head, Hawk and Vermilon exchanged looks. "Do you know about this?" Hawk growled softly under the hubbub of voices whispering all around them. "I thought it was dead. It should be dead." "Don't question the queen," Vermilon muttered, keeping his eyes forward and his mouth tense still. "It's an abomination," Hawk hissed. "Skywing law commands us to kill creatures like that at hatching." Ruby had a dim memory now of something that happened over a year ago. An egg hatched, with twins born inside. The mother tried to escape with both of them. The palace had been in uproar for a week. But Ruby got only a tiny scraping of gossip, usually through Tourmaline, if she was lucky. She'd thought they were all dead, the twins and the mothers. Could this be the one with too much fire? The strange dragonette squeaked and tried to scramble up to the top of the rock wall, her tiny wings flapping hopefully. Scarlet seized a long metal scepter and propped beside her throne and jabbed the center of it into the dragonette's chest. "Down!" she snarled. The dragonette fell back with a yelp. As Scarlet withdrew the scepter, Ruby could see that the round tip of it had a blobby melted spot where it had touched the dragonette's scales. A worried, molten metal smell joined the heat in the room. "Your Majesty!" A squat, rusty-colored dragon near the front of the crowd said. He was one of the oldest dragons in the palace, and had served as an advisor to Ruby's grandmother when she was queen. Whenever he saw Ruby, he invariably made an odd clicking sound of his teeth, commenting on how peculiarly long her neck was, and told her that the secret of long life is eating a goat's kidneys every day. And yet, she could never remember his name. She and Tourmaline called him Kidney Breath. Ahem! Kidney Breath said importantly, waiting for the murmurs to die down before everyone looked at him. Your Majesty, please assure me that is not what it looks like. Queen Scarlet gave him a glittery, all-teeth smile. Does it look like I have the most fabulous, dangerous new toy? Because that's exactly what this is. She floundered one of her wings in the dragonette's direction. Behold, my new future champion! The dragonette poked her head out again, regarding them with those sinister blue eyes. She glanced up at Scarlet's wings overhead and reached for it. The queen kept it well out of her grasp. Your Majesty is wise, the wisest of all dragons, Kidney Breath. Your every thought is genius, and all your decisions are perfect in every way. But are you sure it's safe to keep this monster alive? She's not just any monster, Scarlet said smugly. She's my monster. She's so very useful. Here, darling, show them what you can do. The queen plucked one of the eggs from the guard's talons, and placed it casually to the dragon. Net. At least she made it look casual, but Ruby could see Scarlet avoiding touching the dragon's claws, and how quickly she snatched her talons back. The dragonette looked down at the egg, which was almost a quarter of her own size. Her expression was curiosity and a little delight, as if no one had ever given her a toy before. Then a small tremors began to run across the eggshell. Then the translucent whiteness began to fade to gray, and the orange shape inside gave a shudder, and then turned black, black as coal, black as dead, burnt husks of trees. Before the whole egg went black, and no one could see inside anymore. A hush fell over the room. No one spoke. No one could speak, Ruby thought. She felt as though she couldn't breathe, like perhaps it would be safer never to breathe again. The egg, crumbled into a pile of ashes at the dragonette's talons. The dragonette stared down at her claws with unreadable expression. Was she surprised, pleased with herself? Did she know that one simple act, now merely holding an egg, she managed to terrify every dragon in the room? She twisted her head slightly to peer at the queen. At the moment, Ruby caught a glimmer of something familiar in those weird eyes. The dragonette with too much fire was worried Scarlet would be angry with her. It was Byrne who finally broke the silence. Impressive, she growled. Now deal with the rest of them, or let me smash them myself. Scarlet reached over the scepter and knocked out the wall of rocks in the dragon's way. Go, touch the rest of the eggs, Peril, she ordered. Peril, Ruby thought. The monster has a name. Peril glanced at the eggs and then down at her talons and then back at Queen Scarlet. She looked very small next to the queen. But, she said, her voice swallowed by hot air in the hushed room. But I burnt it. You're my champion, Scarlet said coldly. You will do as I tell you to. Peril hesitated for a moment and looked around at the wall of scales and wings and unfriendly, suspicious eyes around her. She stepped forward, the guards holding the eggs quickly placed them on the ground and stumbled out of her way. One by one, Peril stopped at each egg and laid her claws on it until the dragonets inside were dead. She could do that to anyone, Ruby realized. She can probably kill a full-grown dragon just by touching him. She's the deadliest weapon Mother has ever found. A ripple of horror went through her scales. Is that what happened to Tourmaline? She couldn't unhook her gaze from the murderous dragon net. Is my sister now a pile of ashes somewhere? As Pearl reached the last egg, Ruby found me tore her eyes free and lifted them towards the queen's. Scarlet watched Ruby with satisfied, sinister look. A look that said, "Who would dare to challenge me now? You, my dreaming daughter? Go ahead, try. If you even think about it now, you know whose talons will find your throat in the middle of the night." She was right. No one could stop Scarlet now. Ruby would never be queen. Peril would always be there, the threat lurking behind the throne, the smoking scales that lay in way for any dragon who showed a hint of ambition. So I won't, Ruby thought. I wouldn't dream of the throne. I'll be obedient and loyal, agreeable, anything she wants me to do, anything that keeps me alive as far away from that monster as I can get. You win, Mother. The dragonette lifted her claws from the last smoking egg and turned to Scarlet with a hungry look in her eye. Ruby recognized that look. The "do you love me now" look. Excellent. Queen Scarlet flicked her tongue between her teeth. A thrilling demonstration. Everything I was hoping for. As you say, Queen Byrne. So much for the prophecy now, right? Pearl, back to your place. I hope you know how to control your new champion, Mother, because she's not just a threat to me. The crowd of dragons surged back and struggled to stay out of Pearl's way as the dragonette walked slowly back to the little cage of rocks. This dragon could destroy the entire world. Anyway, thank you for listening as I've read the protologue. We'll be starting with Part 1, Scales of Fire, Chapter 1, in a little while. So, see you later.